Everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and today we're on Anne McCaffrey's Damia's Children, which of course follows upon Damia, which follows upon the Rowan, which follows upon the original Pegasus trilogy. So Damia's Children, obviously about Damia's children, it focuses mostly on the eldest four, and in point of fact, this particular series these last two, this book and the one that follows it, Lion's Pride, very much focus on the eldest four of the lion children, Raven Lion, because everybody's all about the hyphenated surnames. So the book starts by focusing on the eldest child, Laria. I don't actually know where the accent is supposed to go on that, and I've never really cared enough to look it up. And she was named after Damia's brother, the one who died at the end of the last book. So it focuses on her, and she's basically just about come of age. She's now like 18 or so. And so it focuses on her and the fact that she at first is just supposed to be teaching. Well, let me back up a bit. At the end of Damia, we have the arrival of an alien species who managed to communicate with humans using communicative dreams. And they make contact, and some sort of a treaty agreement is reached. In this book, we see it's now, nearly 20 years later, 18 or so, and the Merdini have taken up the suggestion that they should send some of their youngest members to effectively live with human families, and the idea is that the two groups growing up together will grow up effectively bilingual, understanding each other. And while the Merdini and human physiologies are sufficiently different that they can't necessarily fully properly speak each other's languages, they'll be able to be fluent in understanding the other and communicate as well as possible in the other language. And so Laria is sent to the Merdini homeworld, which is anglicized to the name Clarf, and she is initially supposed to be there to effectively act as a teacher and kind of ambassador, because while a tower has been put in place with humans handling it, they still need somebody there to really effectively communicate and teach and make sure that everybody can communicate better than sort of wild gesticulations that work on some of the small number of social and cultural constants between the two species. And that's where the book starts, and it sort of covers Laria's initial arrival, and then it shifts focus to Thian, which is short for Isthian because he is named after grandmother Isthia, that is the great-grandmother, that is Jeff Raven. You remember Jeff Raven back in The Rowan. He is now Earth Prime. He is now the guy who runs FT&T. And so what happens is that Thian then gets tapped because he has a kind of a hobby of studying military stuff. And he gets tapped to effectively be a prime going out with these ships, because the idea is that you have these Navy ships that are flying out into the wild, unknown reaches of space, and by having somebody on board who can literally teleport supplies to the ship, it'll allow them to go on longer, it'll allow them to get more supplies, it'll allow them to not have to worry about not being connected to back home. So Thian then reaches, this then follows Thian for a while, and then at the end of that period, we bounce from Thian to the next youngest, whose name is Rojer, spelled with a J instead of a G for reasons. And Rojer winds up not so much getting tapped to go on a long mission, because he is not quite old enough yet to really be sent out on his own. But basically the Navy wants to have, they want to have another talent be sent out on a ship, and so he gets sent out along with Afra, his father, and to sort of provide some extra boost, because while his father is very, very experienced, his father is only a T2, and Rojer is a T1, which T1 is the highest, the most powerful rank of talent that there is. That's sort of the definable most powerful on their ranking, which runs from 1 to 12, with 12 being the weakest. So we have a bit with Rojer and his father, and Rojer then also gets sent out, eventually does get sent out on with another couple of ships that, again, are looking to have a talent on board to help them with some things, to help them with, dealing with stuff that would be best and easiest and most safely handled by a telekinetic, as well as providing somebody who can give them direct contact with back home. And in the course of various events, it turns out being able to make sure that they receive orders from back in their home systems, to prevent the various ships' captains from basically flinging themselves headlong at the hivers, because this is all about the hivers. You see the sphere on the left, that was the back cover of the book. The hiver, the insectoid aliens that attacked in the Rowan, it turns out that the Merdini have been dealing with them for, centuries, for like forever. And so this alliance is very much about self-protection from the hivers, and the Merdini tend to be extremely aggressive, extremely determined to do suicide runs to take out the hivers, to stop them. And the interesting thing, of course, is that their aggressiveness, oddly enough, is explained in the next book in a really weird thing, which we will get to when we get to that. But the interesting thing is that there's a lot of cultural suicide among the Merdini, a willingness to offer themselves up for cannibalism, that if there is potential death, from starvation, that oddly enough, a younger Merdini is more willing to give up their lives for an older one than the other way round. I will repeat again, this is actually in a very strange way explained in the next book, and by strange way, I mean, it's an interesting alien species concept that she comes up, that McCaffrey came up with. Again, we'll get there when we get there, but what happens is that the Merdini are constantly pushing to just go in there and attack and destroy, and Rojer reaches back to contact Earth and headquarters and to say, you guys need to dial it back and just observe what's happening with the hive. So there's that. And then the focus switches. This focus also has one more point in this, and that is the fourth of the Raven Lion children. There are, in fact, two other, Morag and Petra, something, that there are that there are two youngest. But Zara, who was named after Ella Zara, who was the T1 healer who helped the Rowan with her pregnancies. So Zara develops a really weird obsession with the Hiver Queen. It's actually... It's very oddly depicted in this book because it's very hard to tell whether this is a genuine distance empathy that she sort of empathically connected with the queen, with the Hiver Queen, because they find an escape pod with a Hiver Queen in it, and they bring it to a moon base, which is totally isolated, so they'll be able to keep her from, like, escaping and wreaking havoc. And the thing is that the Hiver Queen gradually just stops moving, stops doing anything, stops eating, and they're trying to figure out how to help her, and Zara gets very, very upset. Like, she goes right over the edge with fury about how there are so many people who say that the queen should be executed, and complaining about how everybody is being just so horrible, and it's one of those odd moments where, on the one hand, her family is very, very insensitive to her, that they are constantly just saying, oh, well, it's just hormones. She's just suffering hormones. And her mother actually starts worrying that Zara is somehow dysfunctional, which is a very interesting way to put it, which has to do with another theme in this book that I don't necessarily recall it cropping up very much in the next one, but this one, it's one of the things that Anne McCaffrey has a very strong bent towards social engineering stuff. She has a very strong bent towards people being sort of very early in their lives given a very direct set of indicators of where they should go and what they should do with themselves. In the talent series, the notion that because talents have so much power, they are sort of insistently from very early on given all kinds of constant psychological monitoring to make sure that they don't turn out like megalomaniacs or whatever. And it's interesting, and it's sort of, it's a very communal groupthink notion, and it's a weirdly uncomfortable thing precisely because you do hear shades of this in terms of the fact that Roger is interested in being an engineer, but he can't be an engineer because he's a T1, and he absolutely must, this is practically legally demanded, become a Tower Prime. He has to take up that job no matter what he actually enjoys and actually wants. And they're basically raised understanding that this is your life, and you are not going to be able to do anything else. And it's an odd thing because it's not, it speaks to Anne McCaffrey's mentality in some very odd ways, and I'm not going to go into it because it would frankly be very, very negative, and I was negative enough about Damia. I very much enjoy this book. I enjoy the characters. Zara does come off a little hysterical, but she's also supposed to be about, like, 13, so, you know, she's got an excuse of being both very, very young and very, very highly empathetic. And her adventure rescuing the queen is actually, in a lot of ways, I find the most compelling section of the book, because it's a lot of drama and a lot of excitement and a lot of adventure and a lot of not doing what you're supposed to, in a way that the others aren't, and I kind of really appreciate that. Anyway, I'm in my last 20 seconds on my timer, so that's everything, and I will, come back next week, probably with Dave Barry, but maybe not. It all depends. Anyway, so, like I said, see you all next week.